Hello and welcome to a Lakers Theory podcast. It's been a while. I'm Shane Jackson. Joining with me, as always, is Austin Case. And we'll start right there because we're recording this on Tuesday, January 19th. And I believe the last time we recorded a Lakers Theory podcast, we decided right before we got on air was, January 7th or 8th?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been 10, 11 days. So just first off, how excited are you to be back here?
I am actually really excited. I've always wanted to kind of ask you, like, hey, do you want to record? But I was like, I don't want to bug you because I know you're going through your stuff. But I figured I would just wait until you came to me and were like, hey, let's record.
Yeah, so I figured we'd start there. I wanted to mention off the top why it's been so long, because normally it will not be this long. I said that we would do at least once a week, and I plan to stick to that routine. I mean, I know we will both be busy, but once a week seems doable, especially with how much they play. That has to be the bare minimum of what we do. But I ended up getting COVID, for those who don't know, who are listening or watching this podcast. It was actually like the first Rockets game, which was January 10th. You were texting me back and forth saying, hey, you want to record? And that's when I was like, well, I'm starting to feel sick. And then a couple of days later, I found out I tested positive for COVID, and it completely wiped me out. I was not able to do anything. I barely watched the Lakers games, barely watched the Lakers highlights. And I was just like, I'm not going to be able to get a podcast in. There's no way I couldn't sit up for a couple hours. I didn't want to sit up and talk and ramble about Lakers basketball. But this is one of the first few days that I felt good since then. The last couple of days have really, just felt much better. And I thought we have to record, otherwise we're going to lose all 12 listeners that we had. So that's why we're back. And I know there's going to be way too much to talk about, so we're not going to get to everything. They played a bunch of games since the last time we recorded a podcast. And so there's no way of going through all of it. But it is kind of convenient that finally when we're able to record again, we're talking about another Lakers loss first off. Because the last time we recorded was after this loss to the Spurs, and we were kind of frustrated. And I think that sentiment remains the same now because the Lakers are coming off a 115 to 113 loss to the Warriors. And really, when I saw all these results piling up, I thought, okay, the next time we record, the Lakers are going to be on a 6-game win streak. This is going to be nice. We're just going to talk about how awesome the Lakers are. And then I got down and actually watched last night's game pretty closely. And I found myself by the end just rooting against the Lakers. I was like, this is stupid. They're not even trying. This is a bullcrap effort, and they don't deserve to win. Like I felt like they deserved to lose the entire time. And so, as big of a LeBron fan as I am, when he fired that three to win the game at the end, I was like, I hope it misses because this is bullcrap. This team can't get by with that type of effort and expect to win against a team that has Steph Curry. So, Austin, do you agree with that sentiment? Were you rooting against the Lakers when it came to it?
I didn't realize that I was until you said that. But yeah, I don't know, man. It just kind of they played really well for like a half a quarter.
Yeah,
and then they got up by like 19, and then they just coasted, not even coasted the rest of the way, and allowed the Warriors to come back, and they couldn't hang on, but. Yeah, it was just, they didn't deserve to win that game. And I personally, I didn't have a problem with LeBron's shot at the end there to win it. I feel like it could have been a little closer because it was a pretty deep shot. But I feel like if that would have been a little closer, just for a little better chance of it going in, that would have been a lot better. But for the most part, yeah, they didn't deserve to win a game like that against a team like that when they give that kind of effort.
Yeah, and I don't want to always cop out to this idea that the Lakers only lose when they don't try. I feel like we've said that a couple losses now where it's like, hey, the effort wasn't there. I think, though, early in the year that probably is the case, and that definitely was the case in that Warriors game. It just didn't feel like, other than maybe that first quarter, it didn't feel like this team cared, and it didn't feel like LeBron or AD necessarily cared about it. I mean, both of them finished below 20 points, which anytime they do that, the Lakers, I believe now are 0-5 when they both score under 20 points. I mean, you have no shot. I mean, we can talk all we want about the depth and the balance and the bench and all that crap. But at the end of the day, if LeBron and AD can't reach 20 points, if they're not the bulk of the scoring, I mean, they're the studs of this team. So where they go, this team's going to go. But yeah, so I don't want to cop out and always claim, hey, the Lakers didn't try, and that's why they lost, because it actually kind of sounds lame when you say that out loud. It's like, oh yeah, nobody can beat the Lakers. But this game in particular just felt off. The Lakers led for 45 plus minutes. They led by as many as 14 or something like that. And they somehow lost that game. It just seems hard to believe. And I know that, Frank Vogel mentioned that their bench on the Warriors end really caused problems for them. And that's really a recurring theme for the Lakers losses. When they've lost and struggled, it's because their bench has struggled, which makes sense. I mean, you can't expect them to play night in, night out really great. But so, yeah, that's just a long-winded way of saying I don't always want to cop out and say, hey, this team didn't try, so they lost. But I think last night, more than any other game, that was true. And I hope that's not maybe something we're still mentioning in April, or March or April. But in January, I'm not going to be too upset about it. In the end, they still had a chance. LeBron's three was still fine. Like you said, the shot actually wasn't that bad. It was one of those situations where, they were trying to get something in transition, and I felt like they held the pass in the situation, and then they called a timeout too late, and they only had, 1.9 seconds left, something like that, to call a play, which is fine, which is an eternity in the NBA. But it was one of those situations where they probably should have called timeout a couple seconds earlier, maybe draw something up better. But, yeah, I don't know. It was just annoying.
Yeah, I remember them going down there and kind of like fumbled the ball. And, I thought they turned it over, and I almost lost my shit. I was like, you had plenty of time on the clock left, and like you're throwing the ball away, and then I was like, oh, they called timeout. Okay, but my ottoman in my office took a beating. I will say, I was pretty upset that they lost that game.
Oh wow. I wasn't. I just went to bed. I kind of was. I shouldn't say that, because I don't know if anybody knows this that's listening to this podcast, but I'm also a huge Ravens fan, and they had just lost on Sunday or Saturday, whatever the day was. The days all blend together when all you've done is lay in bed for the last 12 days. But so the Ravens lost, and then the Lakers lost, and I was like, why do I root for sports? This is so stupid. This is the dumbest thing in the world. Like, I thought, the Ravens lost. It's fine. I'll turn my attention to basketball. And the Lakers have won 5 in a row, and then they lose the first game that I'm paying really close attention to them in like over a week. So I was just like, this is stupid. Sports is nothing but anger. And now that I think about it, I miss days where that 3 or 4 months where we didn't have sports at all, because then I wasn't angry. But no, we are spoiled, obviously, because the Lakers are 11-4, still top of the Western Conference. And I think before what we saw against the Warriors, the main message of this podcast, or the main storyline, was going to be how good the Lakers have been as of late, especially on the defensive end. Because during that stretch where we weren't recording shows because I had COVID, but they won a lot. They beat the Bulls, which I don't even remember that game now at that point. That was on January 8th. And then they swept the Rockets, 120-102 the first game, 117-100 the second game. Then they beat the Thunder, 128-99. And then they beat the Pelicans, 112-95. So a lot of wins, a lot of really blowouts in that regard. And I think the theme from, especially those last few games, was the defense. At one point, it was again after the Spurs loss, actually. AD called out the defensive effort and said that everybody could do better. And then the Lakers really picked it up on that end of the floor. And so I think that was the main big takeaway I had from that stretch, was just how good this team was when they locked in on the defensive end. I mean, you saw, obviously the highlight last week was AD's block in transition. That was really sick. But it was just stuff like that. It was just like, it was a reminder that, oh yeah, this team is still really good on that end of the floor when we thought they might not be. So I don't know. Did you have any big takeaway from that stretch?
I personally think that, like, when they're really clicking on both ends of the floor, that's what we can see because they beat a pretty good Rockets team, like, gave it to them.
Yeah.
I don't know if Harden was just going through the motions because he didn't want to be in Houston or not, but whatever the fact that was, like, they gave it to them pretty well, and like, their defense was incredible, and then but yeah, I think the biggest takeaway from that stretch was, they were just really efficient on the offensive and defensive end for those games, and it showed.
Yeah, I just pulled up Cleaning the Glass tab here on in the video podcast. If you guys are watching it, if you're listening, I'm sorry you can't see it, but their defense during that stretch was insane. Like in terms of points per possession, 98.8 in that Pelicans game, 94.5 in that Thunder game, 95.1, and 91.9 in those two Rockets games as well. I mean, it was just incredible what they did defensively. And yes, I think maybe we overstated the drop off on that end of the floor. But I think it just comes from a different style, right? Like they're just going to win in different ways on the end of the floor than maybe they did last year. I think that's the thing. Although I think their rim protection numbers are still pretty good, right?
The rim protection?
Yeah, rim protection numbers.
I think so. I feel like Kuz is like always getting shots, blocking shots all the time. AD is coming alive and shot blocking. So yeah, the categories on the defensive end that we were kind of talking about that worried us don't really seem to be there. Like they show up, but it's not plaguing them like we thought it possibly could. But I just feel like they're more aggressive. Like the aggressive defensively is probably more of their style than just like straight up rim protection like it was last year. So I think that's what we're going to see on the defensive end, just kind of like really, really rough, strong defense, which can get them in trouble late in games when teams are kind of crawling back in it and they're getting to the foul line, which is we saw that a little bit with the Warriors, actually.
Sorry, go ahead. Did you have anything?
No, you're up.
I think I was going to ask you if there was any other big takeaways, but I did want to talk about LeBron first. I know that he was getting a lot of kind of pub, I guess, right before the Warriors game was just like, hey, LeBron is still playing the best basketball on the best team, therefore he's an MVP candidate. And I can't remember. I was trying to look up his exact numbers to figure out like why that was the case. But is that something you noticed during that stretch? Was LeBron actually making a case for MVP? Because I know you mentioned before the year, hey, AD is a serious MVP candidate, but it sounds like LeBron, in terms of betting odds and just real numbers, is making a case. And maybe that will not be the case after the Warriors game. I don't know how much one game impacts the MVP race or not. But
honestly, I feel like LeBron is just there every night, and so I feel like he just always has a good game, and I could just be me being biased a little bit. Yeah, the Warriors was kind of a bad game. I feel like.
Yeah, he had a high turnover rate.
I don't know though. Warriors was just a bad game, but you're not going to throw out a season-long award for one game.
No, yeah.
I don't know, man. I truly believe he's playing at an MVP caliber. At what 30? How old is he? 38. No, he's not that old.
No, he's in year 18, but I think
year 18. Like, there we go. That's what I was saying. Year 18, and he's putting up double doubles, almost triple doubles.
No, I only mentioned it because the Athletic wrote a story about it. I think it was on Sunday or Saturday or Sunday or whatever, saying that like he's actually making an MVP candidate a case, and I honestly didn't even think once about it. Like I didn't think, hey, LeBron ever realistically was going to be the MVP. And so I just kind of wanted to look at him because honestly, I get blinded by just how much he produces on a nightly basis. I'm just like, what has he done? Like that has made him the MVP, a chance to have the MVP. And I don't know. Yeah, I guess the 21, 8, and 11, which was what, the last game he had before this article. But I think people will remember obviously that 3 last week where he turns around and goes after the bench, or looks at the bench before it goes in. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I just didn't expect him to get MVP buzz this early, or serious buzz at all. But I don't know. Maybe that's more to do with the other players in the NBA. I don't know. I just thought I'd pull up his game log because I didn't know if that's something you noticed as well.
I personally didn't notice anything outstanding other than just the normal LeBron that we see every game.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like it feels like AD's sat out a couple games, and he hasn't always been. It felt like as effective other nights, but honestly, other than that Warriors game, I can't remember like when LeBron didn't show up this season. So that maybe that's more it. It was just like we've seen LeBron be good every night. And I know that's not really saying much. I guess we're already 20% of the season into the season, but it's probably not saying much. But I don't know. At least comparatively, anytime you're the best player of the best team, you probably have an argument. I just didn't know if that was something you noticed over that stretch. Is there anything that you noticed from that stretch that we haven't talked about, other than the defense and LeBron?
No, I don't think so. Just that. It was just a dominant stretch for them, just kind of really showcasing what they can actually do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said before at the beginning of this podcast, there was no way that we were going to hit on everything because, 6 games have passed. And honestly, you forget things when you're not always, recording right after and looking at your notes and stuff. So I knew there was going to be no way that we were going to tackle all this. I mostly wanted to get it on and say, hey, we're alive. And we're going to keep being back at least once a week moving forward now that I'm healthy. Hopefully you stay healthy as well. But I did want to take this time to talk about the upcoming road trip. I feel like that's a big talking point moving forward because this is going to be the Lakers' biggest road trip of the season to date. I believe I already forgot the number I said before we got on air, but it's 7 games on the road now. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, so 7-game road trip. The Lakers aren't back home until February 4th, which I suppose is a good thing for us because they are more on our time zone now. And so we will not be recording at like midnight. But of course, it starts off with the big one, which is the Bucks game on Thursday at 6 o'clock. We will not record on Thursday because now that I'm off the COVID list, I'm going to go back to work and do things. So I will not be able to watch the Lakers game live. But I hope we can record Friday or sometime in the weekend and talk about that game specifically. But we'll probably have to talk about another game if we aren't able to record it before the next game as well. But anything specifically you're looking forward to for this Bucks game?
I'm really curious how they're going to keep Giannis out of the paint because he just gets there effortlessly, and I feel like that's something the Lakers struggle with is keeping guys out of the paint most nights. So I'm really curious to see how they're going to game plan around that. And just also, I feel like the Bucks have a pretty good outside shot. I'm just kind of throwing stuff out there that I've seen clips of just from bits and pieces of games that I've seen. But I don't know. The Bucks handled the Nets. I think they still lost, but it was a good game. So I'm just really interested to see how they're going to contain Giannis and see what they can do against Middleton.
Yeah, I think just in general, I like seeing how this team responds from a loss. First of all, they haven't lost back-to-back games this year, right? Pretty confident in that. And that doesn't seem like something that trait-wise is in them as much. Even in the playoffs last year, it was just like, hey, at some point in the series, they're going to figure the other team out, right? And that was the beauty of this team. So in general, I want to see how this team responds to a loss when that team is someone as high caliber as the Bucks, because obviously this is going to be a good game and not one you can just go in there with half-ass effort and expect to win. So I think in previous games when they've lost, you're not getting the Bulls the next night, right? Like this is the Bucks, and so I think for me, I'm just interested to see how they respond, because honestly, it just wasn't remotely the effort that they should have in that Warriors game. So I want to see, I know it is the first game of a long road trip, but they have to come out and play with more energy and more effort than they showed the other night. And they should expect it not only for the Bucks, but anybody on this road trip. Obviously, they're going to get their best shot. So, but I think this will be really telling to how this team responds. I guess will tell a lot of what we expect of this team. For me, I don't know. I think they even mentioned it. Like the goal is not to have one loss turn into two, and if you can avoid that over the course of the season, you're a pretty good team by the end. So, but yeah, so the rest of the road trip. Bulls are Saturday. Then they get the Cavs on Monday. So 76ers, Pistons, Celtics, and then Hawks. So there's a few good teams in there, but it's, obviously all Eastern Conference teams, all road trip. I think Anthony Davis was asked after the last game, what's different about the road? And he said it's the same. I don't know if that will be the case if it's a massive road trip like this. Because that is a long time. I mean, we're talking about it's been 12 or 13 days since we recorded. I mean, that's how long they're going to be away from their family. I mean, this is just us not seeing each other virtually, and we're talking about how long it's been. So that's going to be without them, without their family. So I think in that element, it'll be interesting to see how this team responds.
Yeah, looking at the Bucks game, I really hope this is a game where maybe we see LeBron really dominate. Just because I know he was kind of upset that he didn't win the MVP last year. Yeah. And so maybe he can come out and just say, hey, I'm still the king of these grounds, and really just give it to them. But they haven't lost back-to-back games in this season, and I don't think they did it in the playoffs either. I don't know when the last time that happened was, but so I really like to think that they're going to really show up and really just be there for this game. But that's a long road trip.
It is insane. Any predictions for the Bucks game? I mean, do you think the Lakers are going to win? I don't even know what the spread is. I haven't looked. And honestly, I should have prepared more for that part of the show. I'm guessing there's probably not a spread. We're recording this on Tuesday. The game's not until Thursday. There's no way. Is there a prediction? Or do you have a prediction for this game?
I
just asked you the hardest question in the world, apparently.
You did.
You're going to say the Lakers will win.
I think the Lakers will win. I think it's going to be a dogfight. I feel like it's going to kind of end up, oh man, I can't think of, that Bulls game was actually a really good game, but there's another game they had that they just had to really fight for the dub, and I can't think of it, but they're just going to have to be there mentally to pull this one out, I feel like.
Yeah, until the Lakers lose 2 in a row, I won't freak out and I won't pick against them. There's no way I'll pick them to do that. So, I also will say the Lakers will bounce back. 7 games on the road. How many do the Lakers have to win?
Have to win?
Yeah.
Ooh, man, you're giving me all the hard questions, honestly.
Okay, I'll say they have to win at least 5, right? Like, if you're going to claim you're the best team, 5-2 seems like a good record to have over the stretch. Do you think we'll be talking about the team going 5-2, after the road trip?
Yes, that's a good kind of starting point for this road trip. I think 5-2's good. Like I feel like the 2 games that they could drop are the Bucks and Celtics.
Mm-hmm. And 6-1 is obviously the goal. If we're talking about 4-3, then maybe we are having a different tune on that podcast. Because honestly, we might have a bad tune if they just lose to the Bucks. Like, that's back-to-back losses. I don't know. That might be meltdown city right there. You might have to trade the entire team the next time we hop on air. Is there anybody you're looking to have kind of a good performance over the stretch, or anybody specifically you're trying to watch?
I'm really gonna watch KCP.
Mm.
Like I'm not exactly. I haven't been watching too closely, but I feel like he hasn't been getting as many minutes as normal, and so it makes me think that his ankle isn't 100% yet. And so I really want to watch him because I personally think he's a difference maker for this team. Just because he might be one of the better 3-point shooters on the squad, so I think he can be a difference maker. Um, like Schroeder has been outstanding.
Yeah.
I really think he's going to just be like a third, possibly a third or fourth option kind of guy on this team. So kind of between those two, those are kind of the guys that I'll be watching really closely.
Yeah, KCP is supposedly the best shooter on the team, right? That was last week's discussion. AD called KCP the best shooter on the team, and LeBron said it was probably LeBron. He said you're asking him to pick your phone.
I don't remember that. I thought I remember seeing Vogel said that LeBron was probably their best shooter.
Oh, that might be too. Yeah.
And then
yeah.
I always look at the comments when people talk about LeBron, and I get so pissed off at people. I'm like, why do people hate him so much? Like, I just don't understand it.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I was going to pull up KCP's stats, but I couldn't do that fast enough. So sorry about that. But I did find out LeBron is 36 years old. I know we were talking about that earlier. Yes, Dennis Schroeder. I don't know. I don't even remember if you mentioned his name. But he obviously had a good game against the Warriors. I want to see if that continues. I remember the last time we talked in a podcast setting, he had been struggling. And so it was good to see him get going against the Warriors. And I want to see if that continues during the stretch. Honestly, I just wanted us to get on air and talk about kind of what we expect from this general trip. But we will provide more updates throughout the trip because I'm back to being healthy, so I think we can do more podcasts. And a couple of these games actually matter. Like, would the Bucks game matter? 76ers game will be interesting. The Celtics game is always interesting. So any of those games specifically that you're looking forward to, or anything else left you want to mention before we get off there?
I kind of look forward to the Celtics game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I personally really like Jason Tatum.
Yeah.
So I really look forward to that game. I feel like the Celtics don't have that crazy superstar power that some of these other teams have, but they're still a good unit. So I think that's going to be a really good game to watch.
Yeah, we didn't even mention the Nets, but we are approaching the end of the podcast here. But that was your pick to come out of the Eastern Conference Finals and face the Lakers in the finals. Looks like a good call so far because, wouldn't you know it, they have James Harden, and now they are invincible. So, you feeling pretty good about that prediction?
I do.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting them to get James Harden.
Yeah.
I think that was the chatter, though, when the Harden issues came up, was that he was going to go to the Nets somehow. The Lakers do play the Nets on February 18th, so we have that to look forward to. That's in Los Angeles. But yeah, I think my Nets out of the East pick is pretty safe. But we'll see what happens. I don't like James Harden.
So, we'll definitely do a show after the Nets game too. But we will do a show sometime after the Celtics game. Again, it won't, or not the Celtics game. Wow, the Bucks game. There's too many games coming up. We will do a show after the Bucks game. It won't be Thursday night. It'll probably be Friday night or sometime during the weekend. But that will be our next show at some point in the weekend. Make sure you're following us on all social medias at Lakers Theory to figure out what our schedule's like going on there. And subscribe to us on all the audio platforms that you get your podcast. I think we're on Spotify, Apple, all that crap now. So you can find us at Lakers Theory and doing that. So thank you, Austin, for carrying the show because this was my first show back. And this is really the most I've talked in about 14 days. So obviously I was not in shape, but we will be better. next time because we'll be a few more days more healthy, and Lakers will have beaten the Bucks by the next time we talk. So he's Austin Case. I'm Shane Jackson. Thank you so much for listening to the Lakers Theory podcast, and see you next time, Lakers fans.